Hey everybody, I'm Dan and this is Angela.
Hi, everyone.
And we're here to talk about today's spiritual discoveries. And the reason we call it spiritual discoveries is because we're going to talk about things that you might not be aware of. They're really not new spiritual discoveries. The Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. But for some of us, that have come out of a religion that we've been in our whole life and lived out that illusion and then woke up and said, wow, I was in an illusion for many, many years. Um, that was a discovery to say, wow, this little box I lived in was this limitation. And what we want to talk about today is, I believe, and Angela believes, that we were called to be more than what society has called us to be. We were kind of born, we got educated, we learned this idea about life, we learned this idea about religion, we learned this idea about politics, and we kind of bought into it, but at the same time, for many of us, it put us in a limitation. It was an us against them. And I believe this, and Angela does too, that we weren't made junk. The Bible says what I made was good and very good. And so how do we get back to goodness? How do we get back to greatness? If God didn't make junk and we're all good and very good, then we're here to do something amazing, something wonderful. But we don't feel that way sometimes. Sometimes we feel like we're junk and we feel like we're limited. We feel like we're less than. It looks like around us many times everybody's succeeding, and so the question becomes, how do we break free of the limiting beliefs that we've put upon ourselves and that others have put upon us? Maybe our families,
That's what we're going to talk about
maybe
today.
our,
That part
yes,
of it. That
maybe
part
our
of it.
work, maybe our politics has said it's us against them. We're the right ones, we're the left, we care about people, we're the right, we're conservatives, and it just goes on and on and on. But the main thing we want to talk about today is the toxicity. Many of the relationships we enter into, even religion, teaches us that we're not good, that we're trash, that we're saved only by grace. We're such a throwaway, that somebody had to come and save us from ourselves, and we're wretched. And we believe these things. And like Grace said earlier, those beliefs get into our subconscious and then they run us. And so we walk around all the time feeling less than. We can't look people in the eye. We might feel we're stupid.
No, we actually feel like what we think about ourselves is just the way it is. It's like God made it some sort of a mistake. He made just this piece of crap, or at least that I've just turned out to be this horrible piece of crap because of what you were raised to believe in, this very dysfunctional way of looking at things. But we didn't know that that wasn't normal. We didn't know that those were actual lies, that they were tools, they were tactics that are being used. Even not that it's our family's fault, but everything starts from the beginning, right? The beginning is where you begin to be formulating ideas of who you are, what you are, why you are, how you fit, and all that. And we maybe came to believe that in this family that we came up in, that we were the piece of crap one in there, or some other idea of ourselves that was not right, because that's the way our families function and their families function and all the way back. And it's just this habitual way of being that is not right, but we don't know that. We just think that, well, here I am 45 years old now, and
They told
I'm
me I'm that
I'm
way.
I'm messed up, and I don't know why I'm so messed up, and we don't do anything about it because we think it's all true, so we don't go digging and searching. Why should we do that? We already know that we're just a piece of crap, and so we don't do anything about it. And I just want to say this. First of all, I got out of the last cult that I was in, and I was nearly dead. And I started praying, God help me. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And if you don't help me, I know you hate me, but I need you to help me, or I'm just not going to survive. And boom, I got help. It was the most amazing thing. It was almost as if somebody in heaven was waiting for me to say those very words. And then I was led right away to a book called Boundaries. And oh, I did not like this book. I hated it. And I met Dan around that time. And he was saying, well, Angela, aren't you going to put that into practice, what you just read there? And I'm like, what? You want me to tell my mother, don't bust in my bedroom when I've got the door closed because I'm in there praying or whatever I'm doing? And he goes, yeah, you need to tell her, you need to say, please do not come in my room, because I had to go live with my mother for a while after I got out of the last cult. And so I had to start putting these things into place. And it started making me feel empowered. And then, but I hated this book because I realized that my family is really messed up. And it was a real wake up for me. And then The Codependent No More by Melody Beattie came into the picture. And that's where you do begin to learn about the toxic family. It's also called the codependent family, dysfunctional family, because it's a cycle of abuse where everybody has his part in the dysfunction. And like in a wheel, if one little a piece of that wheel decides that I don't want to be in this circle anymore, and they get out, if things start to fall apart, and then the family members get really mad because you've messed up this system of things, and they are going to treat you really bad sometimes, and maybe even kick you out of their family entirely. It's that way in religion. It was in the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's in the worldwide. If you don't do exactly as you're told, and you stay in the sick cycle of exactly doing what we tell you to do, then you're ousted. But it upsets the family unit for sure, and because they don't like it. You're getting free, and freedom is so valuable. But the Codependent No More book, oh man, that was bad for that. I really was upset about that because my mother had asked me to check out some tapes when I was younger about codependency, and I'm like, I'm not codependent on anyone. I'm independent. What are you talking about? I don't have any interest in that. And then later on, when my life fell apart and this book came up, I'm like, oh, there's that word again. Codependency. What is it all about? It wasn't what I thought at all. It's this sick family cycle of abuse. It's dysfunction. It's the wrong way of being. So it was beginning to be very freeing for me, but it was very painful. And even you listening to this right now, there'll maybe be an edge on you that says, I don't want to listen to this. That this is I can't deal with it. But you know what? I made myself look at it. I read a chapter. I said, okay, I start to fall asleep. It's the way that I deal. Sometimes my body will deal with stress by just falling asleep when I'm reading because I don't like it. My soul does want it, but my programming hates it. So I would make myself get to the end of a chapter. I'd say, Angela, we're not going to go to sleep until you read the end of this chapter. We're not going to bed. And I would force myself back awake to get to the end of it. And it was life-saving. It was truly life-saving. I learned so much, but then you have to put it into practice, which is a little bit harder. You have to work it. You have to keep reading. You have to keep, going to classes, listening to things to get a grasp on it so that when the time and the moment comes, that you know what to do and that you're prepared to do it. And you've got to grow in self-esteem. You've got to grow in how you feel about yourself, which is really paramount, very important to the whole thing. Because if you don't feel strong and you're trying to set a boundary and they cross it, then you just melt and you just, let it go. So you've got to have a certain level of self-esteem that says, no, and when I've set that boundary, that I don't want you to do this, say this, whatever anymore to me, that you are prepared and you begin to be prepared to do something about it if they don't have any care about it. They just ignore you, which is what they've always done. So we're going to talk about these dysfunctions that are very toxic. And if you become aware, I feel like the key to all of this is awareness. Because when you become aware, then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. Oh my gosh, I'm not who they said they are, that I am. I'm not that. They have put that on me like a label. I'm not that. And you start to become empowered because of that knowledge. It becomes power. So I say awareness is key. Knowledge is power. And it changes everything. It begins to change everything because everything doesn't happen overnight. Oh, do I wish it was easy to just snap a finger and it's just changed. But it doesn't work that way. And sometimes we lose people in our lives by making a stand for ourselves. Very important though, because God has an idea, I feel, for all of us, a very incredible idea. And if we are going to really latch on to that purpose that we have for our lives, we've got to come to understand who we really are, that we're strong enough to do these amazing things that God has in mind for us to do in this life. But if we allow the programming, we won't get there. So this talk is to help us unravel the mysteries of what's really going on here. And because I thought I knew, oh yeah, no, I'm just this, I'm that they say I am, and nothing's ever going to change. No, it's going to change if I will just continue down the road of awareness and then putting it into practice, the harder part of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So we're returning back to the person we were made in the beginning. You know, that that person that was made bright. It's interesting. There's a scripture in the Gospel of Thomas that I really love. And it goes like this. This isn't exactly it, but it says, once you know who you truly are, all power is given you on heaven and earth. I mean, that's they say these writings go back. It might even be penned by Jesus's own hand. But once you know where you've come from, once you know who you truly are, once you know who put breath into you, once you know who knitted you together in the womb, and that what he made was not junk, it says all power is given you on heaven and earth. And that's what we're talking about today, is returning home and getting those labels off of us. One label I had put on me when I was young was I was trying to do a math problem. And my dad was sitting next to me, and I remember in the bedroom, and he kept smacking me on the back of the head, saying, "Come on, you stupid, you're stupid. Come on, dummy, come on, dummy." Yeah, and he kept cracking me on the head, and I just cried, and he just whacked me one. And he said, "This is simple, this is simple, this is simple." Well, my dad, for whatever reason, he could do like trigonometry, like in seventh grade, some crazy kind of math he did. But see, I was an artist. I can do beautiful paintings. I'm an entrepreneur. I used to think something was wrong with me because I couldn't keep a job. I was like, man, he just can't work for anybody. He's just, this independent weirdo. He's this. So people would label me as that, right? I didn't know, but once I got into the fact that I was an entrepreneur, and I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what the damn word meant. I didn't even know what that was about. It was like, because I was in a religion, of course, it said the world was going to end and all kinds of things. I wasn't educated. I had this narrow point of view, Jehovah's Witness for 40 years. So I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, I'm not an accountant. I don't sit down and do math problems, but that doesn't make me stupid. And
Right.
so when I finally got into, I'm an artist, I can make beautiful paintings and make people happy. I can paint furniture and make people very happy, and paint their cabinets and make people very happy. That was a discovery for me, that I wasn't an accountant and I didn't need to be a person that pushed a pen. And here's the problem. A lot of times as we're growing up, like Angela said, people label us because we're different. If we're not like my dad and I can't do problems, I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I'm a throwaway. I'm the dumbest kid. He wish I wasn't born. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's the same in families. You can be called slow. You're the slow one. You're different. He doesn't get it right. She doesn't get it right. They always get it wrong. And we just are built differently. We think differently, but it doesn't mean we're junk. So
And it
what?
also might be a way that they're using the sick family cycle, is that somebody is the boss and the leader, and somebody else is the manipulator, someone else is the one that everybody has a little job in the circle of family, this family circle. And one person's always the scapegoat, and then everybody's got a certain way that they function in the sick cycle. And a lot of it has even been taught by the parent, and then they teach this person, this is how we treat this person, and this person's the stupid one, and she's programmed everyone to think this way about each other in the family. And then the sick family competition, and scapegoat, just this whole thing that they do, bullying and all this thing that goes on in this family, is all part of this sick cycle, this toxic way of being. But it doesn't mean that that's true. And that's where we have to become aware that, oh, so I was put in that place in the family, and it was sick and it was dysfunctional. But I don't have to stay in it. I can get out of it. And that was wrong, what happened. And we're going to talk about what these toxic things are here in a minute. But
Yeah.
the
One of
key,
the, yeah, I was
yeah,
going to
go ahead.
say, one of the things we used to do in a factory, it was a pretty good factory, was find out what people were good at.
Mm,
Instead of saying that guy's an idiot, look at how crazy a job he's doing, we'd say, maybe he shouldn't be in the sanding department. Maybe we should put him over in the spray
I
department.
love that.
Maybe, wait a minute, he likes to assemble things. Let's put him over in the assembly department. And they would take a lot of time to analyze who you are. Oh, these people can't work together. Let's put this one over here and ask him if you would work over there. And once we got people fitted where they belong, it worked out
I
perfectly.
love that.
And so this is what we're talking about today. But like Angela said, we have to start with, being willing to look at the label that
Exactly.
somebody put on us. And it probably wasn't intentional. It
No,
probably was, they just, from their point of view,
or the
thought
way they were
this person's
raised.
a little slower. This person's different. This person's, like my dad, nobody in our family was entrepreneurs. They worked for somebody. They got a check, and that sort of thing. So they weren't of that blood. And why I was different, I don't know, but it doesn't make me bad. So, like Angela said, the first thing to realize is to take a look. It's kind of like a fearless moral inventory, right? Of, you know, what the hell is people put on us? Okay, what am I
Exactly.
calling myself?
Yeah.
It's like Grace said, so much of it's in our subconscious. It just comes up. It actually runs our life. It's like a hypnosis.
Mhm.
And we actually have to come out from under the hypnosis. I would just want to say this,
Mhm.
a lot of times religions are intentional for keeping
Mhm.
us in hypnosis, dumbed down, if you will. We're the only ones. They need to be genocided, whether it's Christianity, Jehovah's Witnesses, somebody else always has to die in order for us to prosper.
Yeah, it's
And
controlling.
it-
It's a
and it's
controlling.
the same in politics and many other things. So
Mhm.
go ahead, Angela.
So basically what we have to do when we begin to come awake, that we have to admit that once we become aware that this thing that we've discovered is wrong, we have to admit it. And so I went to a domestic violence class one time. It was really quite by accident that I went to it, but I did. And I sat in and I'm listening to all of this and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am being abused badly. And I was just shocked, like literally it just floored me. And I had to start saying I met Dan at that point. I'm like, Dan, I've been abused.
Discovery.
And I felt like I was lying when I said it. But it was absolutely key to my getting better. So I was shocked and I had to admit that I was not being physically abused, no, but I was being mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and you add yours to it, abused. And you have to start to admit, and I did with trepidation that I'd been abused. I was in PTSD. I didn't even know that I had PTSD, really bad at that point. I had fibromyalgia. At that point, I really didn't understand that either. Then God led me to these books that I just told you about, and and I started having to realize that I've got to protect myself. So something, I learned about boundaries, something my religion and my family of origin never knew anything about whatsoever. And then I had to start protecting myself. Once I realized that I'm being abused, I had to start standing up for myself, which I didn't want to do at all. But if I was ever going to get well, I had to. And I began to realize this. And I thank God that I did have help. I had Danny just came in my life. Thanks be to God. And he'd gone through a whole bunch of training for about 4 years before me with an incredible mentor that he talks about in a book called Eyewitness, The Shocking Insider Story of Jehovah's Witnesses is an incredible story. Um, so anyway, so I got the Melody Beatty book and I read it. Like I said, I was really disturbed. Um, so, but I began to realize that, oh my gosh, my family is the epitome of what this codependency and boundaries is all about. It's the worst kind. And matter of fact, came to realize it's toxic. And so anyway, here's that book, Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. And she's got Codependent and Beyond after that. Really, it really says how to stop controlling others and start caring for yourself. But it's actually a little bit, you start to realize that you're also part of the sick family cycle. So you're also, part of this, making this wheel, the sick family dysfunctional wheel of being in this family. You're part of it. So you've got to stop your part in it by getting off the train, off the wheel. And that, like I said, causes a lot of disturbance and you may lose your family, but it's worth it. So this one I want to say, so this is the 18 signs. We're not going to do all of them. We're going to do 9 of them. You probably grew up in a toxic household. Again, everything is awareness. So this is a part of codependency. It's the toxic end of it. And like I said, I realized my family's the worst toxic and I've got to do
One
something
that hurts you
about
the
it.
most.
And if I don't do anything about it, guess what? I stay on the wheel of dysfunction and I will go nowhere. I'm going the same, the definition for insanity, you do the same thing the same way over and over again, and you will get nowhere. So I had to do something, and that's the bravery, that's the courage that we have to bring about by prayer, is by needing the courage to do what it is we need to do to get whole. to get out of the dysfunction, to get where we're thinking right. So I'm going to just say this. God loves all of us children. Every one of us is important, every single one. No one is less or more important than another. Many of us have not experienced the reality of a loving family who validates our needs and our feelings. So these are the signs that we're going to read right now that you may have experienced in your past, or maybe are experiencing right now. That you are currently, but very possibly, in a toxic situation. With your friends, your family, it doesn't really matter, your workplace, your church, it's all of it. The following would be signs that you've been involved in a toxic situation, family, whatever. I'm going to try to make it fit everything, but this is mainly to discover as a child, was this going on? Because it's what caused you to be set in this programmed way of being from your childhood. As they all say, everything stems from the root. The root is the problem. And that's what has to be become aware of it. So if you're in a toxic relationship with someone now and you're older, then probably you were in the same kind of toxicity when you were younger. And so you just need to think about it. How did this kind of start? And begin to be aware. And then you can begin to change it. That's the only way.
I want to say this too. I've heard this saying before. It says you spend the first part of your life getting beat up and the second part healing what
Yes.
was broken.
Yeah.
I think it was Carolyn Mace who said
I
that.
think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's true, isn't it? So the first one is that the toxic parent in this situation, everything has to do with the parent, but you could say, like I said, put it to your mate, your church. You can use whatever you want here. So they overreact to everyday situations. So the smallest events, and often they feed off emotional drama. So this parent that's toxic, or it's doing things in a toxic way, is just making small little things you do, small little mistakes you make, blow them way out of proportion, and just make you feel really scared. You begin to feel scared to do anything, and you're just terrified. You're going to make mom and dad mad, and you're just afraid to make mistakes so badly because they use it as a control tactic, and use it as a way to make you feel lesser than them and smaller, lesser than your siblings or whatever. Your parents exhibiting this behavior of over dramatizing and making a big drama out of it, you begin to be scared, like I said, for fear of the smallest thing maybe being blown out of proportion, or for fear of punishment or anger or abuse. And so you just become sometimes paralyzed. But you might just become scared to speak. Maybe just you come up with your own ideas as a child. Why everything's just this big drama, and so everybody has a different reaction. Some people maybe are going to go off and hide and never be good communicators because they're so afraid that they might make mistakes, speak the wrong words. Who knows what, maybe you became an angry child because of it. I don't know. There's different reactions we all have to this, but we get fear of punishment. So let's just put this to the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Worldwide Church of God that I grew up in, Dan, Jehovah's Witness. We're afraid in there to make mistakes. They dramatize things in a big way, and like show dramas at these conventions and things, and look what happens if so and so went away, and look, this horrible bad things happened to them, and they could lose their salvation, and oh look, at one died, even they should have never left, afraid to make the slightest bit of mistake, or you might not make it in the kingdom, the paradise, heaven, whatever it is you believe, and you're petrified, terrified. So some of this is anyway, we'll just move on to the next one. You have any more to say about that one? Okay,
that's good.
So the next one is comparing siblings. Your parents are doing this comparing thing. They pit you against your brothers and sisters even. They may assign different roles to each person and then use it to compare, why can't you do that like your sister? What's wrong with you? Can't you do anything right? And they use these comparisons and maybe choose one child to be the favored one, and you're the one who's always picked on. Anyway, of course, the children will internalize this and causing them to become competitive and angry and hostile and abusive to one another. And playing the comparison game, that's what it creates, is this thing the toxic parent will do. Dan had his dad compare him. You can talk about that, Dan.
Yeah, my dad did that with us, in the Kingdom Hall, even when we gave our first talk. I'm so proud of you, Dan. You got up there and you gave that 5 minute talk, And then my brother got up there and my dad says, wow, that was incredible. You're a good speaker. And I looked over at my brother, like I'm gonna do better. And it felt like after a while, it felt like a marathon. It felt like a boxing match, that went on and on. We're in round 15 and we are always trying to outdo each other to the point where finally we showed up on the football field and we literally run at each other like bulls, just boom, and start fighting, because there was all this jealousy, because my dad was, and I want to say my dad was doing it thought he was doing a good thing. At that time, there wasn't the education that we have today and the online stuff that would talk about how that might be harmful. So he thought he was doing a good thing, that it would be like our iron sharpening iron, we would make us stronger. But like it said right there, became toxic. There was jealousy, there was anger, there was you're not better than me. And then there was pride when my brother got built up, that he was, walking around like this. And anyway, it just turned into fighting.
And oddly, children want to be seen in a good light in front of their parents. They want their parents to love them and adore them. They just do. That's our natural inclination,
Yeah.
is to feel that way. So you'll do anything to get dad's approval, right? Or mom's approval, anything. And it's why it all works. That's why this is so powerful and effective. But the next one is playing the victim card and then gaslighting. So the parent plays the victim card. And so this is how this works. Did you ever get upset about something and react to some abuse that happened to you from your parent? And you felt so hurt and so upset from this poor treatment. And then by what they did next, by your reaction, maybe you start crying. Let's just say you start crying or, explaining or something, and you just feel just demoralized. You're really upset. And what do? They make you feel like it's your fault. They turn it around. So here they've abused you and done this crap to you and made you feel like crap and just really laid it on. And that was wrong and sick. And then they turned it back on you. Well, if you're just so stupid, if you won't be so stupid, and they come up with some sort of a gaslighting way of making the whole thing your fault. Parents, partners, they do this. The ones who do this are often not wanting to take responsibility or to be held accountable for their own failures, mistakes, and even fail or refuse to see their own wrongdoings in any given situation. So it becomes flipped around so that you are to blame. And that's an example of gaslighting. So let's just use the convention. Well, this is not a family one, but well, okay, I'll use my own family one. My ex was having an affair and I was seeing it. So we went to the 4th of July parade one year and we set out a blanket, and this other woman was with us. And so my husband lays on the side and starts talking to her just face to face, like that far apart. And I'm behind him and I'm being ignored. And so when the whole picnic was over, I'm like, what's going on there? What's happening? I feel like something's going on with you two. You're face to face, you're ignoring me, and so he just let me have it. You're crazy. You're just imagining these things. You're just making this stuff up. And he just went on and on and on. And I just shrunk, because he didn't want to take responsibility for what was happening. And so he had to
For
turn it,
flirting and having a good time.
right, flip it around on me. Now let's talk about it from a religious point of view. We were at the 2023 convention, and I will let Dan talk about this part of it.
Yeah, and I was mentioning to one of the elders there, took an interest in me, turned around. This was at last year's convention, the last day, the last part of the last day, we snuck in. And anyway, the elder was in front of me. How you doing? Who are you? And I said, well, I used to be a witness years ago, and here's why I left. Oh yeah, well, you can come back now, And I said, really? You can just come back? Oh yeah. I said, well, I left and I've talked about it and, kind of apostate. Oh, you can come back. 3 months you'll be back. I'm like, huh? 3 months I can be back? That ain't what I heard. It's 2 to 10 years and letters. Oh no, Al, what are you talking about? Gaslighting, right? What are you talking about? That's not true. And I said, well, actually, I've seen it and actually experienced it. And he goes, absolutely not true. And I said, well, what do you think about 1975? The fact that, a couple 100,000 people left, and they were prophesying the end of the world. He goes, never happened. What are you talking about? You know, do you live in California? And
That's
I
crazy.
said, no, I don't live in California. He said, well, you know, they have some of those wild ideas out there in California. And this guy was, you know,
He was
he'd
good,
been through
man.
75, he'd been through the
Oh
generation
yeah.
prophecy.
He said he'd been in 40 years.
Yeah, so I said, well, I left during the generation prophecy. He goes, what prophecy was that? That's what he said. I said, the generation prophecy. Remember 70 or 80 years from 1914, the end was going to come, and
Man,
you know,
pathological
and I
liar.
said, you don't know nothing about the overlapping generation prophecy. He goes, never happened. He said, never. There was no prophecies. I don't have no idea what you're talking about. There was no prophecies. In fact, if you come back, I mean, you don't obviously live too far from here, right? We're over in Eagle, and if you'd like to
Mm,
come back, you know, come on back. We'd love to have you. And don't worry about what you've done, or
yeah, we'll accept you back, he
we'll
said.
accept you back right away. He said,
Yeah,
well, he said, we just had a lady we reinstalled. She left, and
reinstated her,
a couple
reinstated her.
months later, she's back
Yeah,
fully active, and it's all good. Come on.
yeah, so come on back.
Total gaslighting,
Oh man.
he's gaslighted himself. Actually,
Wow.
Watchtower gaslighted him.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And just saying we never prophesied that. And then he turned and used his gaslighting on me. Of course, I was ungaslightable, you know, because I know what I know, you know.
Amen to
And
that.
I just looked at him like,
Mm.
wow, you know, governing bodies really did a good job with these people. They're
Yeah, no
totally in
kidding.
denial
Oh
and
man.
out of
No,
touch.
they probably taught him what to say if
Yeah.
they run into
Yeah, he
anybody.
might have knew I was an apostate.
Yeah, he
I
probably
was the only
did.
one with a Bible.
And the only one taking pictures. No one took pictures of that
David
conviction.
said to me, he goes, where'd you get that antique? I said, what antique?
The
Because
Bible.
Angela tells me, it was
Silver
funny.
cord.
Angela tells me, she goes, Dan, nobody here has a Bible. I said, Angela, everybody has a Bible. Quiet, you know, don't say that. Everybody has a Bible. And she goes, well, just look. And I looked down the aisle, and everybody's face was glowing because they were staring into this tablet, you know, this big old tablet. And they were all like this. And I mean, they were glued to it,
Oh
weren't they?
yeah. Oh
It was
yeah.
like just aisles of like somebody having a little light on their
It
face.
was
Just
more like a computer than a tablet, but anyway, they could look at all kinds of programs and push buttons to look at all these different videos from the past. They can go into the org, they can all these things. He showed us how to use it even.
so I said, you guys don't use a Bible. He says, well, we haven't used one in about 10 years. I'm like, I was out of touch, right? He says, yeah, we haven't used one in 10 years. And he says, and I haven't touched one. He's like, touched one as if it was a disease in like 5, he said. I was like, oh, okay. A lot has changed.
So the next one was we talked a little bit about already, and it's the personal boundaries not being respected. So for anybody who's maybe not completely clear on setting boundaries, it would be like, for example, I'll just use the example because I'm going to use it for the rest of this whole thing. My mom, when I first got out of the second cult that I was in, was dead set and intent on getting me back in the worldwide Church of God that I grew up in and got out of when I was 22, 23 years old. And so she was so delighted that I've just now come out of this second relationship, when my relationship with my husband and this cult that I was in, so she can get me back in hers. So here I am, just barely escaped this horribleness, half dead. I'm staying in her home, and she's intent on getting me back into the first cult. And so I said, Mom, I don't want you to talk to me about the religion that I grew up in. I don't believe that anymore. Now she's thinking, you don't know what you believe, Angela. You're nuts. And I'm going to get you straight, your head straight. You're so messed up. And I'm thinking, yeah, but I'm not going to be that. I already decided on that. God intervened in my life, which I shared with you, but you don't believe me. And I know that that's not the truth. And I don't want you to discuss it with me. So she completely ignores my request. Now that request is called a boundary. Dan comes over and she just starts talking about it right in front of me. We literally just had this conversation. And then she just starts talking like, I didn't hear anything you said. I don't care what you
Yep.
said. It matters not to me. Your opinions, your feelings, your issues about it. I don't care. I'm just going to talk about it, and I'm going to sneak around and just say it to Dan. And you'll have to stand here and listen to the whole thing because I'm dead set on you're getting this truth back into your system. And she told Dan, please don't be coming around here anymore. You're going to mess things up. I'm trying to get my daughter back in the truth. And she's messed up right now. She's crazy. She this, she that. And I want you to go bye-bye. You're just going to mess things up. So Dan's like, no, not doing that. And so she starts laying into him about the truth, right? Teach the truth about the worldwide church God believes. And I just was mad. I was mad because she didn't respect me. So I took off for an hour and then I came back, and you think she cared? Do you think she cared that it caused me to go into PTSD trauma over it because I felt so violated. I was so upset. And she didn't care. Didn't
It was
care.
just as crazy as the witnesses. You know, we have our God's name Jehovah. We don't believe in a Trinity. Well, in other religions, they're just as staunch.
Oh yeah.
And hers was, that you keep the Sabbath. You stop working Friday night till Saturday night. And what was the other one? The Sabbath and foods.
Yeah.
And so
And the holy days,
in the holy
Jewish
days.
holy days.
But basically, she would look at you and say, "I don't want anything to do with you. I don't. In fact, I'll never." What'd she say? Like you,
Accept
or
you. I'll never accept
I'll never
you.
accept you
It's
into the
family.
family. She told the lady that at Thanksgiving. She looked at her and goes, "See that guy there?"
Sitting right.
She goes,
right
"That guy
there.
right there." She's a couple feet away from me. She goes, "I'll never accept him." And it was because I ate unclean foods, which were like
Shellfish,
shellfish,
seafood. Not really
shrimp,
seafood, but
bottom feedings type stuff. And so I ate unclean food, sausage,
didn't keep the Sabbath
and
day.
didn't keep the Sabbath
Didn't
day
keep the
holy. And
holy
she says, if
days.
you don't do that, that's the starting point with me.
Yeah.
And so it'd be like us saying, if you don't know Jehovah, only those who know Jehovah will live.
Right.
And so it's just as crazy. I want people to know that it's just as crazy in other
It is.
religions.
And of course, we were all concerned about the fact that Armageddon was right around the corner. The end's here. Always you're living because the end is
Same
almost
thing.
here. It's any minute, any
You're
moment.
gonna save yourself if you keep the holy days in law. You're going to
Right.
save yourself if you know who Jehovah is.
Yeah, God's people you're going to be found keeping the Sabbath day and keeping it holy. So you've got to keep the Sabbath day. Seventh-day Adventists are the same. Exactly. They say that they accept all faiths and religions. The truth is they're lying. They're lying. And I know that firsthand. My father is a Seventh-day Adventist, and I studied all about it. So boundaries are not respected, they're not important, and they're not taken seriously. So can you think of some situations where your boundaries, what you felt was important were not respected, and you asked them to not do this and they didn't listen to you? So can you think of something in your life where that happened? Well, if so, it wasn't right. It was wrong. That is not acceptable. In healthy families, they do respect each other's boundaries. They do respect each other's beliefs. They respect each other's opinions, likes, dislikes. Like, for example, if you wanted to, like Dan, I don't want to be a mathematician. I don't want to be the calculated, mathematician type person in the family. I don't want to be the doctor. I want to be a wood finisher. I love wood. I love music. But that's respected in a healthy family. But some families are dead set on that you have to be like me, like Dan's dad. You have to be smart and intelligent with math, sharp, like me. You can't be different.
You gotta be a doctor because I'm a doctor, or an attorney because I'm an attorney.
Yes.
Whatever.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Or an elder or a presiding overseer,
Yeah.
or whatever you want, a minister, whatever you want to call yourself. You have to be like I want you to be. And that's toxic. That's not the right way of being. The next one is always needing to be right. So can you think of somebody who had to always be right, and no matter what, they will practically kill you, demoralize you, destroy you, because they have got to be right. They cannot admit to anything. And so they're going to really give you some heart. So these are narcissistic people that are like this. So did you have somebody in your life who's been very narcissistic? You may have grown up in a situation with a narcissistic parent who has a difficult time taking responsibility or allowing themselves to be held accountable for anything they do wrong, and will not allow themselves to accept criticism from you or others, and cannot even accept the possibility that they could be wrong about anything at all, no matter whatever it is, the topic. So I thought of my ex, like that example on the blanket at the 4th of July. He was wrong, but he wasn't going to admit it. And he was always right. I was always wrong. In that whole religion thing I was in with him, even, you cannot be, if you have a different idea, you're just always wrong. And same thing, Dan had the same thing talking about with the governing body. They're always right, you're always wrong. If Dan had a thing where he came up with was, did we just pass the 1975 prophecy? Go ahead and tell that story.
Yeah, in the late 80s, early 90s, I I heard there was new information coming out. Yeah, this was after we preached about the generation prophecy, the 70, 80 years from 1914, we would see the end and the great tribulation, right? The signs, you remember all the signs, nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. So we told people they were all happening in this one generation of 70 or 80 years. So as we were kind of winding that up, we were like, hey, we're in the late 80s, it's definitely a generation. And all of a sudden, I don't know why I was awake, but they said that people were getting excited that we had new information on the generation. In our religion, you would hear like they went to an assembly and Jehovah gave them some more spiritual food at the proper time.
Which means new information or changed. It's changed.
New information, it was going to be totally different
New means
idea.
change.
The light went out of the generation prophecy and a new light came on, new BS.
Which means the end of time would come. That's what this is all about. For those of you who are not Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes.
The end of the time was here. So that time came and went, and then Dan goes to some.
So I went to my best friend who was
Right.
an elder, and he was standing next to an elder. And I said, are we like passing up a prophecy? It seems like we all believed this one way and believed the world was going to end 70 or 80 years from 1914. And it seems like there's some new information. Did that change? Did we pass a prophecy? And they looked at each other, and all of a sudden I was a bad guy. I was actually put on apostate watch because, like Angela said, the governing body couldn't be wrong. I had to be wrong. So they had to gaslight me and say, boy, those terrible brothers that believed in the generation prophecy, when it's they themselves who put the idea in our head and had us, it was actually a carrot.
Yeah,
they were using to lead us along to say it's almost here. It went from 75 to now we got it. It's a generation. It's a generation of 70 or 80 years. So that had put us in this time period from 1914 all the way up to the late 80s of this generation of 70 or 80 years when it was going to all happen in that time period.
So get to the
point. So anyway, that's where I got in trouble. They put me on apostate watch, and
yeah, they literally
I left
turned
not
him
too long
in.
after.
So here's where they turned him in. See, this is where they do this this sick thing. It's very toxic. They turned him in to Brooklyn, New York, for having said this, and then he got the letter that came back and said that put him on apostate watch for looking at literature or whatever that had to do with apostate literature. Dan had not done no such thing at all, but they didn't even ask. Just he caused trouble, and they're right and you're wrong. Always, they're always right and you're always wrong. And so because you're threatening our power, our authority, this is toxic, that they're going to put you on notice that you'll be kicked out of this organization and you'll be punished. You're being punished for doing something that we consider wrong. We're right, you're wrong. You're always wrong and we're always right. No matter if we change it up and we completely annihilate the old things we said and we come up with new, then we said it's changed and we're right and you're wrong. And so this is very toxic. It's narcissistic is what it is, according to this whole thing about the toxic household. So the next one is you give only conditional love. So this is a parent who gives only conditional love and dish out ultimatums for not doing exactly as you're told. So, you've seen those situations where every child deserves to be unconditionally loved by their parent. But most of us are not unconditionally loved by our parent. And unconditional love doesn't mean that when you do something wrong that you're not going to get in trouble for it and that they should say nothing. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that if you do make a mistake, they still deeply love you and honor and respect you. And you feel that, you know that. But a conditional loving parent will love you only if and when you obey everything that they say and they want you to do. And if you don't, then you're going to be dished out ultimatums. If you don't do what I say, I won't love you. And not just that, but I'm going to turn everybody in this family against you because you're not doing what I asked you to do. And what I say goes in this family goes. And you are not to argue it. And so I will love you only in and when and if you do exactly as you're told at all times. And if you don't, well, I'm going to withhold my love. And I'm going to turn your brothers and sisters against you, because that will make sure that you step back in line and you get back in order. You get back on the circle of abuse, and you're doing your part to make this whole thing work. And it works very effectively because you don't want to be ousted. You don't want to be not loved in your family. You want your parent to love you. You want the governing body to love you. You want your elders to love you. You want, your boss to love you. You'll do anything. We're taught this as children to do whatever it takes to get people to love us.
That's happiness.
Yeah, but that's conditional love. And we're not made to feel that we are only loved when and if, and the ultimatums that come if we don't do exactly as we're told. So children and abused persons in these families tend to feel that love, it has to be earned by what they accomplish and by acting in accordance with the parent or husband or whoever's wishes, the elder's wishes, in order to be loved. If you don't do exactly as they wish, you are told that you will be loved when and if you do these things that we're asking you to do, and that punishment will ensue if our wishes are not fulfilled by you. So you see where that's gone in the Worldwide Church Guide, in the governing body of the Watchtower Society. Very, very controlling, and you never feel unconditionally loved ever. As long as you obey the rules of the governing body and of this Watchtower organization, you will be loved and accepted in this organization. And if you don't, you will be quickly thrust out and punished. And good luck if you even get back within 10 years, because that's how harsh the punishment is. And even if they make up the lies like they did in Dan's case, saying that he was looking at apostate literature and that's why he was to be put on apostate watch, was a lie. So they are very controlling and very showing that you better do exactly as you're told if you want to stay in this family. Really, really sick. Very toxic, extremely toxic. Number 7, insist on conversations always being centered around them. With this kind of parent or person in your family or your husband, you will often feel heard. You will often feel heard or truly listened to as a child. You will often never feel heard or truly listened to as a child or partner with this parent, that all conversations are centered around them. When you live in this kind of family, the family members' needs are prioritized over the needs of other family members who are listened to. So they'll listen. So they'll pick on somebody in the family in the 6 cycle. One person in the family will be the favored one, and they'll listen to them in the conversations. And you're sitting around in this family gathering of a conversation, and the parent will respect the views of that kid and not this one. And you might be that one that you're ignored. Oh, just listen to her, what she has to say. They'll do this little game thing where you're felt like that, what's important to you is completely ignored, and your needs are not important and your thoughts are not important. But the other ones, this one is. And this causes all kinds of issues, jealousy in the family, competition, self-esteem issues for you if you're that person who's the one not being listened to, rejection issues, to name a few, because of this toxic thing a parent does of favoring one child over another one, and the conversation being completely centered around what that parent is discussing. So you can't even change the subject because everything's centered around what they want to talk about, and they insist on everything centered around me and my life and what I'm doing. And then they it's just sick. And then they, you're ousted. So you can't have an opinion about that. You're just a nobody. And it's very, that happened to me, where I feel like that a lot of times happened to me, where I was the one that just kind of had the stupid brain and my opinions didn't matter. And I was scapegoated as the dumb one. I did have a little bit of what do you call it, Dan? It's on the autism spectrum a little bit, where I've had to overcome it quite a little bit, but it just made me a little bit dysfunctional. But
Well, they can install that in you.
that's true.
I
I
mean,
think
if you're
so.
told, if you tell a kid, it's like religion, right? When you tell people you're wretched, you were born of a mistake, you're a dent in every pan, and you reinforce that every church meeting, you eventually go in, and me and Angela have seen people do it. They've been in a group and they said, yeah, we're crap. we're wretched. Yep, we're the pastor's going, that's right. That's exactly. Let's never forget what we are. I swear, wasn't it?
Oh
It
yeah.
was in a Nazarene church
Oh
was the
yeah.
one we said, let's go visit the Bible study and
And
see
we
what
knew it was a cult in our
yeah, we knew it was. But we said, let's go visit the Bible study and see what they're talking about. And they were reminding each other that they were sinners and they were no good. And they were each praising each other for how good they could say it. And I was like, oh my God. So you can have a form of this dumbed down or autism only if you believe it. You're not dumb and you're not junk.
Yeah. And but anyway, this whole thing is insisting on the conversation always being centered around them. Yes, there are some really toxic parents who they don't want to talk about anything but what's going on in my life and what I'm up to, and they'll spend hours and hours making everybody in the family listen to what they're doing, and nothing. They don't care. They don't ever ask you, "What are you doing? What are you up to? What do you think?" They don't make sure it's even in this family that I'm just as important as you are. They are the center of attention. Very toxic, and it's narcissistic. It really is. Well, yeah, no doubt, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, cause you to feel drained and weighed down, and I'm going to call it tanked after conversation. So, same thing, same conversation going on, like we just discussed above. But in the end, you feel drained. Like, let's just say that, this person is talking about something all about their life, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And we went here and I did this, and I, going on. And you try to interject, and you try to interject, you try to interject, and they shut you down, shut you down, shut you down. They don't care what you have to say. You're not important. Your opinions don't matter. And but this sibling, I'll listen to her, but you go away and you go home, or you go to your room that night and you just feel exhausted. You just feel tanked. I call it me feeling tanked, weighed down, because you're nobody. And it feels bad. It feels really, really bad. That is toxic. And it's sick, and it's not balanced, and it's not supposed to be that way. So, and then I think we're going to do the last one. Never, never or rarely took your feelings into account. I think we kind of already covered that one, so we don't need to go. But ignored you. Yeah, we've already covered that. So anyway, I think that's probably it.
Maybe
Yeah.
Grace has a thought or two.
Yeah. What do you think
Anyway, we're
about?
just finishing up.
Oh, and by the way,
Oh, yeah.
there's 18 of these. This was 9, so we've done half of them, and we'll do the other half next time because it's too much in one sitting to do more. So what do you think about it all, Grace? Can you
Yeah,
relate
if
to
you
any
want to
of
make a
this?
comment, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. But if you'd like to share a few thoughts, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You're very well rounded, and
Yes,
you've
I
got
agree.
a lot of good intuition and knowledge and wisdom.
And whoever maybe doesn't know, Grace is from Sweden, and so
Sounds like it
No,
anyway.
that's my
Gaslighting.
excuse. That's my excuse. No, but I really wanted to say I always thought that Dan was such a good speaker. And now I have my explanation because his father set him up to be in competition with his brother. And he's really a good speaker, isn't he? What do you think, Angela?
yes, no, I think that, Dan has always been a person that wants to do things in the best and highest way. Like when he's a wood finisher, he's like, I'm going to be the best wood finisher. When he tries to do speaking, he takes time out to plan out what he's going to say. He thinks it through. He just wants to do everything to the best and highest that he possibly can do it. And all that he does, he's always been that. I think it's partly his personality, and maybe it did have to do with his dad
Yeah.
doing
And
that.
I always think of how can somebody else become you know what I mean more. You know what I mean? Like this whole talk is it's really not about me and what I know. It's like how can we get something across to somebody else to
Right.
help them become better and pull this stuff off of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
It's always our
Right.
intention.
And Dan's had some really great mentors too, and he's read a lot of really
Yeah,
great
lots
books.
of books, you know.
So yeah, it helps a lot.
But I mean, I think many times, I think it's because I'm from Sweden also. When I can listen to people who talk and I can listen effortlessly. I don't have to strain myself to understand or focus very hard to understand. Then I can, it's so easy to understand when he's talking. That's what I'm saying. So I think probably it's a little bit different if you are from United States. So I think it's for me, but you are international, so I think this is a very important thing. But you also speak good, Angela. But I mean, Dan, he has a edge of it. It's
Oh,
really
yeah,
fantastic.
I
true.
don't know about that.
Yeah, I know he's really good. And I'm
Mm.
grateful, because he's just really clear and
I
it
want to
feels
say this.
comfortable.
Years ago, I wondered why people were liked by other people. That's kind of a core. I thought, because I was a throwaway. I was the dumb kid in school. I was the kid that walked around with my head down. I actually got a D- when I graduated. And I was the dumbest kid in school. I didn't relate. I thought the world was going to end. I thought I wasn't going to drive. We thought the world was going to end in 75. So there was no need to drive. There was no need for school. And so, but I looked around me and I thought, who are all these kids? How come people like them? Why do people like them? Why do they relate to them? Why not me? How come they don't like me? Why do they look at me like I'm some wart, some pieces? Really, they did. They looked at me like I was dirty. My clothes were dirty. My hair was dirty. I never combed my hair until the 8th grade.
Wow.
I never combed my hair. My pants were I don't know what you
Holes
call
in
it,
'em, maybe?
holes in them.
Did you wear socks?
No, I don't think I wore socks, underwear. We were really a mess. I mean, my mother was schizophrenic, but I had this thing. Why do people get along with each other? And so we read all the books. Dale Carnegie was one, How to Win Friends and Influence People. How to there were several of them. There was Cialdini on persuasion. There was this and that. And I started reading and I said, oh, that's how come people like each other, because you're interested in them and not you. And they want to be heard. They want to talk. They want to, really, I found out when I read Dale Carnegie, most people think they're great. And it's not, I'm great. They think they're great. And so most people want to talk about themselves. And so anyway, there was a time in my life where all I wanted to talk about was me. And I couldn't wait to talk. And now I don't give a shit. I really don't. If I don't care. It's like if someone wants to talk at me for an hour, okay, maybe I'll have time for it, maybe I won't. But I don't have any desire really anymore to like fix or repair or whatever. But when we do a show like this, I think it's all about them, isn't it?
Right.
It's all about how can we help you to get more free? What can I say to get somebody out of their head, to get somebody out of this religion, this idea of us and them? Like, how can we rid them of toxicity? That's what Angela put this talk together this morning, this toxicity. We've got to deliver this to people. We've got to try to deliver it in a way where it doesn't sound like we're just talking about toxicity. But what would happen if we were to get rid of toxicity? What would happen if we were to have that out of our life? Who the hell would we be? We would be the person God intended us to be, which is all the possibility that he had in mind. I say he, but it's he or she or whatever. But you know what I mean?
Because, right now, this is the whole thing on this is awareness, to become aware of what is toxic, what is not functional, because we don't know. We come into our lives and we just think that, well, this is just how it is. We have no idea that there's another way to be or another way to live or another way of doing things or seeing things. We have no idea. This is just what we know. And so trying to bring awareness is key. And then from there, it's like how to implement it, how to make it stick, like when you set a boundary, and how do you make it stick so that you feel good because you're so excited. You set a boundary, you stated what you want, you made it clear, you've spelled it out, and then those people don't care.
You find out they didn't kill you. When you set the boundary, you're like, wow, I didn't have to take that abuse. Right?
Well, yeah, but the point is that you set the boundary, but they don't care about it. So my point is, now what? Now what do you do now? That's where you get into this. So first key is awareness. Number two is, how do you really make this work? How do you really set these boundaries and make them stick so that you're not living in this toxicity anymore? What steps do you have to take to get out of it? What must you do? What must you lose? What must you go to study? What have you got to say? What if you have to set a boundary with them now and say, now because you won't listen to me, now I'm not going to be able to call you as often, Mom, because you just won't listen.
It's like stage 2 of boundary, right?
Yes. And then if they still don't do it and it goes on for years, and you might even have to say, I'm sorry, but we're going to have extremely very little conversation because I just, it just continuously ends up that we're in the hole. You don't care how I feel, what I think, what I want, who I am. You step right over me, you treat me like crap, you abuse me, you threaten me, I can't live my life every day with you texting me all day with these little bitty, things that etch away my life and make me feel like a piece of crap. And it's just eroding me. I can't allow that anymore. And so I can't have conversation. It's very painful. And to have to do that, it's not pretty, but guess what? If you don't, you will continually be eroded.
And if you do,
you'll begin to get well.
you're going to shine.
Yes. So that's why this is valuable. There's a lot to learn, but this is awareness,
Courage to take
101.
Encourage, you talked
Yes.
about.
Yes.
Because once you
Courage.
become aware, then you got to strap on the, I don't know what you'd call it.
The bigger pants. Right?
Yeah, you've got to step up then. We were listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was a girl that was saying she had somebody living in her house, and she didn't have a voice, and she kept talking about, what would you call it, the symptoms of not having a voice. He did this to me, and they won't cook, and they won't do this, and her boyfriend do that. And the lady listened to her. It had to have been 2 hours. I would have turned it off right away. And I would have said something like, well, this is a new skill. And like Angela said, you've got to be aware that you need a skill. And then you have to have the courage to say, I've got to all of a sudden get my voice and say, oh, look, that's not going to happen. No, don't do that. And so they didn't really get to that, I didn't think, with the girl.
They made sure that she realized that, as you've gotten into this brand new house, your 25-year-old daughter and her boyfriend are living there with you, and they're just doing this and they're doing that and all these things wrong. But and now you're getting mad at them and you're telling them that you didn't this and you didn't that and you didn't bring the dishes in from the bedroom. But the lady said, but you didn't write down the rules, the house rules, so that they knew what to expect. So how can you now cut them down for doing what to them is normal? That's how they do things, when you didn't even let them know of your expectations. So that's step number 1. And then step number 2 is going to be, what if they cross those boundaries? What if they don't follow the rules? What if they continue to do all these things that are in the family rules, whatever they are, don't cuss, whatever. If they continue to do them, now you've got to have the balls to make that stick. You have to say, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to leave. You're going to have to move somewhere else. I can't have this in my home. And I've got these other little kids listening to you and watching you do all these things. No, I'm sorry, but you can't stay here. You're going to have to move somewhere. You're going to have to make it stick. And that it gets difficult, but the more we grow in self-esteem and love for who God has made us to be, we're not just pieces of crap. You have the courage slowly to make it stick. But when you don't have good self-esteem, you'll just shrivel and you'll just, okay, all right.
Have you ever
I don't want to deal with this.
Have you ever had to do that, Grace? Have you ever had to use your voice and come out of this, these labels people have pinned on you? Have you ever had to do anything like that?
Yeah.
It's like I don't take too much personal. I mean, I usually I have somebody I call and talk to. If somebody annoys me, then I tell the other person what happened. And usually I'm not really sensitive, unless you talk about my mother or Sweden, then that could really irritate me. But I was thinking about this. I noticed, because I talked to some people on weekends, and here is the deal that I have noticed, that they are allowed to change the subject, but I am not allowed to change the subject. And all those people who change the subject, they are, excuse me, Dan, I'm not talking about
That's
you
okay.
now, but all the people who are allowed to change subject, they are men. But I'm a woman, so I'm not allowed to change it. And that's really an eye-opener for me that you brought up, Angela. And also, about the Jehovah's Witness, when they took back this book for baptism. I got a little green book that I should study for my baptism, and they took it back and they were like, no, you can't get baptized. And I was like, and then they made me feel like I was lesser than them. So that was Jehovah's Witness elders, but I mean, everybody had this opinion about me that I wasn't allowed to get baptized. But now come to find out that they reinstate pedophiles, but I wasn't even allowed to get baptized, and I did nothing wrong really.
Wow.
Except I think maybe it was because my mother wasn't a Jehovah's Witness and they knew I loved her very much. Maybe that had something to do with it. But anyway, there were so many things you brought up that I don't remember what I was going to say now.
I like, well, what you were saying, and I think you bring it up a lot, and I like it, was a lot of witnesses are still practicing elders, as you notice, when they're not in the Kingdom Hall, but they still have that authoritarian,
Oh, being
women should
ex-witnesses.
shut up. Women are just pushed right out of the conversation. I've seen it happen over and over on 6 screens, and a lot of things that women's voices should be less than they are. And I call them practicing elders. So I know brothers that I'm like, man, dude, you're sick. Ugh. You still sound like an elder. What's this? This way you speak down to people. And so I like when I hear you come on, I like that you defend that,
Me
that you
too.
say, stop it. Yeah, stop doing that. And you're pretty point blank. I mean, I've seen you on, a couple of shows, and you've made some people cry.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
really
really,
awesome.
I've watched you, a guy's face have turned white, and all I see her doing is holding up a mirror.
Yeah.
All I see is saying, you're still an elder. Who are you talking to? Why are you talking to a woman like that? And people have literally, I've seen them shut down the show, I think, a couple times. It was so crazy,
because you
but
don't mince words, and I love that. Maybe they didn't want to
the
baptize you.
church will set us free. If a guy's acting like a narcissist, tell him. You're acting like a narcissist. You're acting like the governing body. You're acting like, let me reinstate and let me tell you the exact date. Let me tell you this and hold on. And I mean, but I see a lot of women still manhandled. You can call it manhandling. Yeah,
Dan and I, we lived in Colorado before we lived in Boise, Idaho, and there the men treat the women pretty equal. It's pretty nice. But we moved to Boise, Idaho, and it was very different. And so me and Dan went on an appointment, like, we always go on appointments together. I'll say certain things and he says certain things, and I'll explain how we seal in the dishes, and so that you don't have to take them all out and blah blah blah. And so I'm explaining these things, and this guy, he was a Mormon. And he looked at me. Well, first of all, he was in the kitchen, very large kitchen, very large home, and his wife was nowhere to be found. He's in there making these decisions, doing the appointment by himself. And he looks at me like, excuse me, you're a woman. What, do you have any business saying anything? And he didn't even have to say the words. It was the look, and it was powerful. And it's like, you could see it. It was all over his face. Like, hello, shut up, woman. You have nothing to do with this business.
Yeah, and I want to just say he basically, in Denver, the woman is in the kitchen. The woman is telling you what color she wants on her cabinets. I want white. I'm tired of this old yellow wood tone. I want white. I want it to be bright in here. And the husband goes, it's her place. It's her workplace. In Boise, it's like, woman, we're not going to turn this into a hospital.
Right.
Actually, you need to leave the room while I discuss this with these people. So Angela, it blew me away when she felt this lady needed her book, Awakening from Unconscious Resentment. So Angela says to the woman, I have a book I want you to read. It's called Unconscious.
No, I wanted her to review it.
Review it. And anyway, long story short, the guy says, I will review it and then I will give it to her. And Angela said,
what did I say?
You said, no, I don't want you to read it.
Oh, that's
it's
right.
for your wife. You don't need to read it. I don't want your opinion. I was like, holy shit.
But guess what? She was never going to have her hands on it until he read it first.
Oh yeah.
And he never let her have it.
But that's what it's like here. It's authoritarian to the hilt.
Yeah,
you
women
can feel
are
it in the
nothing.
air. Women are nothing. It's like, now I shouldn't say everyone, but
no, but
a large percentage women are just walking with their heads down. Yeah. The men are walking around, you know. and they're telling us what to do in the house, and we're like, wow.
And then the young girls in the schools, it's the boys, the girls chasing the boys, not the boys chasing the
It's
girls.
different here.
It's
I just say
really
it's different
crazy.
here.
It's like they know that they can have whatever woman they want, however
Yeah,
often
the
they
women
want.
jump up and down and
Ugh.
notice me, and the guys walk ahead of them, and three girls are following them, and they're all fighting for their attention.
Yes, imagine how these girls are going to grow up feeling like that they've got to chase love. They have to chase this affection. They have to get noticed by being sexy or whatever. They're not just going to be accepted for the beautiful people that they are, and that the man goes and tries to woo them. There's no wooing here.
Yeah, and how
It's the
bad,
other way
I want to
around.
tell her how bad it ended up getting at the end of the job. I actually did the job the way the lady wanted it, right?
Oh, right.
Because I said, I'm going to make another sample. And he goes, I've already approved that sample. That's what I want. But I noticed his wife didn't want the heavy lines on there, and
It
it
was
looked like a rustic
rustic.
cabin. I said, I'm going to refine them. He goes, I don't need you to do that. I said, well, I want to do it. It's part of our plan. I made him a real refined one. He goes, okay, that's good. That's good. And so the lady still looked a little bit like she wasn't happy. So I actually did her kitchen very light, very nice. And
It had glaze streaks that were softened down, so it looked like kind of real wood, and well, not really, but it was very beautiful. But he wanted it like manly rustic, almost like he wanted to make it something she didn't like.
yeah,
It
and
was kind of evil.
yeah, and the greatest insult of all was at the end when we were done. He says he went out and bought his wife a Kentucky Fried Chicken dinner, and she was eating her dinner, and he said, okay, like go into the room and eat your dinner. And he says, we're going to the Italian restaurant. And I was like, no, we don't have to go to a restaurant. He goes, no, I want to take you to dinner. I said, how about your wife? He says, well, she has dinner. She's eating some chicken in there. And so he literally took us over to, I would say a
Italian.
5-star Italian restaurant with and I'm thinking, all I could think of is his wife was home eating a chicken dinner out of a box
and forced to be in her room.
and forced to be in her room
was
and
so
voiceless.
abusive.
And we've seen that over and over.
Oh yeah.
So Grace, the work that you're doing there is definitely needed. I mean, how else is it going to change? How else is it going to change unless you say, I was talking, excuse me, and I didn't finish my thought, and I'm going to finish my thought. And that's how Grace comes across.
Yeah, I agree.
I've heard you many times. It's a similar thing.
It's the thing is that I'm from Sweden also. I'm used to a certain amount of dignity here in Sweden. I mean, we score on the first place on men being equal to women, and
wow.
United States only score fourth place.
Oh my God.
So we are ahead of you.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of work to do. So, but I mean, for me, it's just a little bit natural, and maybe there are other things also that's happened in my life. I think that helped me to be who I am. So it's not all me, I guess.
You know what I like about it? I have to say, I've always been this kind of person, and it's kind of crazy, but I always like to stand back and watch the show. So all of a sudden Grace come on, it's Grace from Sweden, and all of a sudden I look at the guy interviewing, he's like, holy shit. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting back like this going, what is she going to say to him? And then how is he going to react? It's like watching a soap opera,
Yeah.
and I'm like, holy shit. So Grace is starting to unload now, right? And the guy don't know what to do. He's like, I'm male, I'm authoritarian. I mean, I'm just saying it's kind of cool to watch, but I also know there's healing. I also know it needs to be said. And thank God there's somebody that has those values in other countries and can bring some of that here, especially in religion.
And Jehovah's Witnesses.
And Jehovah's Witnesses.
Worldwide Church of God, same thing. Oh man, Worldwide Church of God is really bad male chauvinist, really, really bad, the one I grew up in. But I think that witnesses are right there with it.
Oh yeah.
Really.
Oh yeah.
But I'm glad that there's people like you and Grace that come to our country and kind of try to set things right about the way that women should be treated and that they should be equals, because I absolutely feel that, man and women, we're going to be judged together in the kingdom as equals, not as man above woman. It's not supposed to be like that.
Yes, and I've seen people change because of what Angela said to people. I've seen people change as what you've done, Grace. I've seen men change and women change. say, oh yeah, that is right. Yeah, that was just done to me. And they're like, wow, that's not right. Like Angela
Right.
said, the awareness part of it. So you're just bringing awareness that women are human, women are equal, women are the same thing.
They're important. Their
They're
opinions
impor-
matter,
That's
you
right.
know?
So good job,
Yeah,
Grace.
good job.
Keep up that
Yeah,
work.
amen to that.
I know you're not just coming on there to do that. I know you have lots of other things to share, but I appreciate that as one of the qualities that needs to be brought in. And I know the women appreciate it, and the women are made very much aware of that. And I've seen the shows evolve
Hey,
because
Grace,
of it.
guess what? Hidley was on last night. Did you hear that?
Oh, I just heard the end of it, a few minutes. I heard her voice.
Yeah, so she I guess she's been having quite a few health challenges and whatnot, and some deaths, some really important deaths that have been really painful, but some health challenges. But Rick was trying to get her to have her own show, but anyway, it was really fun. She was on, and all of a sudden, Jay came on, and he's come on late night with her all the time, and he was just like, "Oh, I just love your voice," and they just had a good little chat, and I don't know. I think it would be really good for her to do a show, late night show or something, because she's just really great at making everyone feel good and important, and she's just so tender. She just has a way of complimenting everyone. Oh, Jay, it's so good to hear from you. And she's so delightful. And I hope that she does get a show, but it was really fun to hear her last night. And I think
Rick's offering a
she's
show.
powerful.
Yeah,
She's
Rick's
powerful.
offering a show if you're interested.
Yes.
Women in Power.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, Rick said
That's right. That's true. It is. Great.
I shouldn't have said that, but
Grace, you should offer your services.
yeah, Rick says he's hunting for talent. He said,
He did.
I'm looking for somebody to do a show,
Yeah.
later
Good
night show.
person.
Oh, you're teasing.
No, he really does need somebody. I
He
think
does.
he's one. I
He's
don't know
wanting to
why.
keep it going. I think he's
He likes
realizing
something new. He likes
as he's trimming down and trimming these night shows, a lot of people I don't hear anymore. A lot of people are gone. Yeah. Anyway, I just wondered what happened to him. I wondered what happened to some of these guys.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a lot of them. I haven't heard some people from Canada. But anyway, Rick is looking for some talent.
Yeah, he is. So maybe you can offer, Grace. That would be great. Just throwing it out there.
And I sleep when the show is on, because it starts like a quarter to midnight and it goes on all night. But sometimes I wake up early because I go to bed early, and that's why I get on late, because then it's early for me. So
That'd be great. Maybe you could do a late night show, because you're just getting up, just throwing it out there. But he's looking for some new, he calls it talent, looking some new voices. So that'll be fun. It's always fun.
But we better wrap this
Yeah, we
up,
should.
Grace.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
tuning
joining
in.
us, Grace.
Yeah.
It was delightful to hear your voice.
Yes, it was.
And have you on here today. Thank you.
thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
So we're gonna just end it
Unless you
here.
have any closing thoughts, Grace, do you have anything else to add?
You're both wonderful couple. Thank you.
Thank you,
No,
Grace.
thank
We
you.
love you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening in, and hope you got something out of it.
We'll be on next Sunday with some other talk. Oh, it's
That's right. The other half.
the other 9 things.
Yep. All right.
So, all right. Have a
over and
good
out.
day and have a great time in Sweden. Hopefully we can come there someday and see you, Grace.
Amen, Grace.
Amen. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.